frozen heart. The children's laughter echoed down the hallway of Pine Ridge Rehabilitation Center as Olivia Reed guided 7-year-old Thomas through his walking exercises. Her hands steadied his small frame while he concentrated on each step, his face scrunched with determination. "That's it, Thomas. 5 more steps and we're done for today," she encouraged, her voice soft but firm. The boy had been working with her for 3 months since his car accident, and his progress brought her the only joy she allowed herself these days. At 29, Olivia had built walls around her heart so thick they might as well have been made of concrete. Her colleagues called her dedicated. Her sister called her stubborn. Both were right. 18 months ago, she'd discovered her fiancé Daniel in their bed with her supposed friend, just 2 weeks before their wedding. The betrayal had left her with nothing but a returned engagement ring and the shattered pieces of the future she'd planned. Never again, she had promised herself, tossing her wedding dress into a donation bin. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford, emotionally or practically, not when her 19-year-old sister Jasmine depended on her since their parents' death 3 years ago. After finishing with Thomas, Olivia checked her watch and hurried to the staff room. Tonight was the annual fundraiser for the children's wing, and Dr. Fleming had practically begged her to attend. "You're our success story, Olivia," her mentor had insisted. "The donors need to see the faces behind the work we do," she sighed, changing into the simple navy dress she'd brought. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders as she removed it from its practical bun, a touch of lipstick, and she was as ready as she'd ever be for an evening of small talk with wealthy potential donors. The hotel ballroom buzzed with conversation when Olivia arrived. Soft jazz played as waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. She grabbed a glass of water and positioned herself near the display of children's artwork from the center. "The dinosaur with 3 heads is quite impressive," came a deep voice from beside. Her Olivia turned to find a tall man studying the crayon drawing. His suit was clearly expensive, but he wore it with the casual comfort of someone who didn't need to impress anyone. Something about his easy smile made her pause. "That's Thomas's work," she replied, gesturing to the colorful scribbles. "He created it after his first successful day with the parallel bars." A celebration of achievement, then. The man's eyes, a warm hazel that seemed genuinely interested, met hers. "Are you one of the therapists?" "I am. Olivia Reed." She offered her hand professionally. "Ethan Montgomery." He shook it, his grip firm but gentle. "I'm just a volunteer." Olivia nodded, unaware that she was speaking to the evening's primary benefactor, a tech billionaire who'd recently moved his company headquarters to the city. To her, he was simply someone else who cared about the children, nothing more. "The progress these kids make is remarkable," Ethan continued. "What made you choose this field?" Before she could answer, Dr. Fleming appeared, his eyes widening at seeing them together. "Olivia, I see you've met Mr. Montgomery." The doctor's voice carried a note of reverence that made Olivia curious. "His donation is funding our new aquatic therapy wing." As understanding dawned, Olivia's expression cooled slightly. Of course. Another rich man buying goodwill with tax-deductible donations. She'd seen his type before. Daniel had worked for one. "The center does important work," she said politely, taking a step back. "If you'll excuse me, I should check on our display." As she walked away, Olivia missed the look of genuine interest in Ethan's eyes. She didn't notice him watching her stop to kneel beside a young patient in a wheelchair, her face transforming with a warmth she never showed to adults anymore. And she certainly didn't hear him whisper to himself, "Now there's someone who means what she says." Silent whispers. Olivia nearly dropped her coffee mug when she spotted Ethan Montgomery in the rehabilitation center's lobby the following Tuesday. He wore simple khakis and a blue button-down rather than the tailored suit from the fundraiser. More surprising was the small acoustic guitar case slung over his shoulder. "Mr. Montgomery," she acknowledged with professional courtesy, "are you here for a tour?" "Actually, I'm here to volunteer." He smiled, holding up a badge. "Music therapy program. Once a week." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware billionaires had free time for volunteer work." "I make time for things that matter," he replied simply, no hint of defensiveness in his tone. "And please, it's Ethan." For 3 weeks, Olivia maintained her distance, observing from the hallway as Ethan taught simple chords to eager young patients. His patience surprised her, particularly with Thomas. who struggled to position his fingers correctly after nerve damage from his accident. "My hands are stupid," the boy had cried one session, throwing the small guitar onto the floor. Olivia had rushed forward, but Ethan was already kneeling beside Thomas. "You know what? When I started learning, I thought the same thing." He picked up the guitar and played a deliberately awful discordant strum that made Thomas giggle despite his frustration. "My teacher said something I never forgot. Your hands aren't stupid. They're just having a conversation with the strings that they haven't figured out yet." The way he spoke to the children, never condescending, always genuine, slowly chipped away at Olivia's preconceptions. One rainy Thursday, she found him in the cafeteria, staring at a sad-looking sandwich from the vending machine. "Hospital food is punishment," she commented, sliding into the seat across from him. "There's a decent deli across the street." His eyes brightened. "Is that an invitation, Olivia?" "It's a public service announcement," she corrected, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. They began taking their lunch breaks together. Strictly professional, Olivia told herself. She learned he had built his tech company from a college dorm room, that his parents had been teachers, and that he played terrible chess but excellent poker. He never asked about her personal life, which made her strangely willing to share small details. Her sister's college applications, her love of old mystery novels, her terrible cooking skills. Then came the day Lucy Henderson's surgery failed. The 12-year-old had been making remarkable progress after a swimming accident, but complications left her back at square one, possibly facing permanent paralysis. The entire staff felt the blow, but Lucy's devastation was unbearable. Olivia found herself crying in the supply closet when the door opened, and Ethan stood there, his own eyes rimmed with red. "Sorry," she mumbled, wiping her face. "I shouldn't." "Don't." He handed her a clean handkerchief. "You care. That's not something to apologize for." The next day, Ethan arrived with a specialized adaptive music system for Lucy. Technology that allowed her to create music through minimal movement and eye tracking. The girl's face had lit up for the first time since the failed surgery. "Why are you really here?" Olivia asked him later. "This can't just be community service for your company image." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "My younger brother had cerebral palsy," he said quietly. Places like this gave him a life worth living. Something shifted in Olivia that afternoon. The wall around her heart didn't exactly crumble, but for the first time in 18 months, a tiny window appeared in its facade. Walls crumbling. The autumn air carried a chill as Olivia hurried across the hospital parking lot. 3 months had passed since the fundraiser, and her carefully maintained distance from Ethan Montgomery had gradually evolved into something she refused to name. Their lunch breaks had extended to occasional coffee after shifts, and twice he'd convinced her to join the staff hiking group he'd somehow become part of. "Just colleagues," she reminded herself whenever her heart quickened at his approaching footsteps. Yet she couldn't deny the way conversations with him had become the brightest moments of her days. Today, however, her mind was elsewhere. Jasmine had stopped answering her texts, and her sister's roommate had called with concerns about Jasmine missing classes. Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from Ethan, asking if she was still joining everyone for coffee, but she quickly typed a cancellation. Her apartment was empty when she arrived home. On the kitchen counter sat Jasmine's acceptance letter to the art program she'd dreamed about, alongside a rejection of the scholarship she'd been counting on. Beside it lay her sister's medication, untouched for what appeared to be days. When the call came at midnight from the campus security office, Olivia's hands trembled so badly she could barely hold her phone. Jasmine had been found disoriented near the art building, in the midst of what appeared to be a bipolar episode, something they'd managed successfully until the stress of her senior year. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Olivia promised, frantically searching for her car keys. When she found them, her hands were shaking too much to grip them properly. The hospital was 40 miles away, and the thought of driving in her state terrified her. Before she could reconsider, she called Ethan. He arrived in 15 minutes, asking no questions as he helped her to his car. They drove in silence, his calm presence the only thing keeping her from falling apart. At the hospital, he waited patiently while she spoke with doctors, and finally sat with a sedated Jasmine. "The scholarship was everything," Olivia whispered when she finally joined him in the hallway. "Without it, all her work was for nothing. I can't afford the tuition on my salary. There are other scholarships, Ethan offered gently. Not for spring semester, not with application deadlines passed. She pressed her palms against her eyes. This was her dream. Tell me about her art. The simple request broke something in Olivia. Words tumbled out about Jasmine's talent, about raising her after their parents' accident, about sacrificing her own dreams to provide stability. And finally about Daniel, the fiancé who had promised to help support Jasmine's education before his betrayal, left Olivia alone with all responsibilities. I promised myself I'd never trust anyone again, she admitted, not meeting his eyes. It was safer that way. Safer, maybe, Ethan said quietly. But is it better? When Jasmine was discharged the next morning, Olivia was surprised to find Ethan still there, having spent the night in the uncomfortable waiting room chair. As they walked to his car, his hand brushed against hers, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. Shadows of the past 2 months after Jasmine's hospital stay, Olivia found herself staring at the text message on her phone with disbelief. I need to talk to you. It's important. Daniel, her ex-fiancé's name on her screen, sent a cold wave through her body. She hadn't heard from him since the disastrous end of their engagement. Why now, just when her life was finding a new rhythm? The past weeks had brought unexpected change. Jasmine had returned to school with renewed determination, supported by a private arts foundation scholarship that had mysteriously materialized. Though Ethan denied involvement, Olivia suspected he'd made calls. What she couldn't deny was how naturally he'd become part of their lives, helping Jasmine with her portfolio, bringing dinner on late therapy days, his quiet presence becoming something she looked forward to rather than resisted. Last weekend, he'd kissed her for the first time. Under the glow of street lamps after a concert, his lips had met hers with a gentleness that made her heart ache. The walls she'd built were crumbling faster than she could reinforce them. Now Daniel wanted to talk. Against her better judgment, Olivia agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown. He looked the same, handsome in that polished way that had once seemed so appealing and now felt hollow. You look good, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. What do you want, Daniel? Her voice remained steady. He leaned forward. I made a mistake, Liv. The biggest of my life. She listened stonily as he described his regrets, his therapy journey, how he'd realized what he'd thrown away. Then he placed a folder on the table. I've been investigating the man you're seeing, he said. Ethan Montgomery isn't who you think he is. The documents showed news articles about a scandal involving Ethan's company 3 years ago. Accusations of stolen technology. A lawsuit settled out of court. The researcher who brought claims against him mysteriously relocating abroad. He buys people's silence, Olivia. He's not the saint he pretends to be. I couldn't let you walk into another heartbreak. Later that evening, when Ethan arrived at her apartment with takeout containers and a warm smile, Olivia felt her newfound happiness fracturing. She confronted him with the articles. Is this true? Did you steal someone's research? The pain in his eyes was unmistakable. I see you've met my past, he said quietly. The lawsuit was real. The accusations weren't. He explained how a former colleague had claimed credit for work they'd developed together, how the settlement had been to protect innocent employees from a lengthy legal battle. I can show you the original documentation, he offered, but I have to ask, why now? What prompted this? When she admitted Daniel's involvement, something hardened in Ethan's expression. Do you believe him? The question hung between them. I don't know what to believe anymore, she whispered. This is exactly why I swore I'd never do this again. Trust just leads to pain. Ethan stood, his movements deliberate as he placed his keys on her coffee table. I won't push where I'm not wanted, Olivia. But remember this, people who truly care about you build you up, not feed your fears. As he walked to the door, he paused. When you're ready to talk, if you're ready, I'll be there. But I won't be another person who makes promises you can't trust. The soft click of the door closing felt like thunder in Olivia's ears. The walls around her heart had reformed in an instant. But for the first time, they felt less like protection and more like a prison of her own making. Healing light. For a week, Olivia moved through her days like a ghost. At work, she maintained her professional composure, but the children noticed her dimmed smile. At home, she alternated between anger at Daniel's interference and doubt about Ethan's explanation. Jasmine watched her sister's internal struggle with growing frustration. "You're doing it again," Jasmine said one evening, setting aside her sketchbook. "Building walls so high even you can't see over them." "I'm protecting myself," Olivia insisted. "Are you? Because from here it looks like you're just choosing to be alone rather than risking being hurt." Jasmine pulled out her laptop. "I did some digging about Ethan's lawsuit." The screen showed interviews with the researcher who had sued Ethan. Not about stolen research, but about credit distribution. Further articles revealed the man's history of similar claims against former employers, and his subsequent hiring by one of Ethan's competitors. Daniel conveniently left out these parts, Jasmine noted. "I wonder why." The next morning, Olivia requested her ex-fiancé's medical records from their shared insurance period, something she'd never bothered to check after their breakup. Daniel had never attended therapy as he'd claimed. Another lie. At the rehabilitation center, she passed the music room where someone else now led the sessions. The children asked for Ethan regularly. Lucy, the girl with the adaptive music system, had composed a song that the local news had featured. Everywhere Olivia looked, she saw evidence of a man who built things rather than destroyed them. After her shift, she drove to Ethan's company headquarters. The receptionist recognized her name immediately. "He's not here, Ms. Reed. He's at Pioneer Park." Olivia found him on a bench near the pond, watching families feed the ducks. When he saw her, his expression remained carefully neutral. "I've been doing some research of my own," she said, sitting beside him. "Daniel lied about everything." "That doesn't surprise me," Ethan replied, his voice gentle. "But that's not why you're here." "No." Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm here because I realized something. When Daniel betrayed me, I decided trust was the problem. But trust wasn't the problem. Choosing the wrong person was." She turned to face him fully. "I've spent 18 months building walls to keep people out, telling myself it was strength. But watching you these past months, the way you show up consistently, how you help without expectation, the genuine care you have for everyone around you, I realized what actual strength looks like." Ethan's eyes softened. "Olivia, please let me finish." Her voice trembled. "I'm terrified, but I'm more afraid of becoming someone who never takes chances again, who never lets anyone in than I am of being hurt. You once told me that people who care build you up instead of feeding your fears. You've been building me up from the moment we met." Ethan reached for her hand, his fingers warm against hers. "I can't promise we'll never face challenges, but I can promise you'll never face them alone again. Not because you need someone to save you, but because you deserve someone to stand with you." The afternoon sun painted the park in golden light as Olivia leaned forward, her lips meeting his. For the first time since her heart had shattered, she felt the pieces fitting together again. Not exactly as they were before, but stronger in the mended places, like gold filling the cracks of broken pottery. "I'm not promising forever," she whispered against his lips. "I'm only asking for today," he answered, "and then tomorrow if you'll have me." As they walked hand in hand through the park, Olivia realized that true healing wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending scars didn't exist. It was about finding the courage to step forward anyway, to choose trust despite knowing its risks, and to recognize when someone's actions proved worthy of that precious gift. In the end, the woman who had sworn never to love again discovered that the greatest act of bravery wasn't building walls. It was opening the door.